Sun's Solar Panel Podcast. Joining us here live, if you are on YouTube, if you are listening to the podcast, thank you so much for doing so. My name is Tim Tompkins. Joined today, of course, we have Mr. Greg Esposito as well as Dave King, but a very special guest on this episode, Eric and Madison from CanisHoopus.com, who had a really interesting debate with Dave King over on Bright Side of the Sun. Eric, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
So I was reading a bit about the back and forth that you had with Dave, and it was kind of centered, a lot of it anyway, around who is better, Devin Booker or Andrew Wiggins, and just my slight opinion on this is that when you talk to people around the league, an opinion that you hear a lot is, but no one will take on that Andrew Wiggins contract. That's not something you ever hear in regards to Devin Booker.
Well, because there's never actually been that conversation yet if Devin Booker would actually be available. I don't think we get to the point where it's treated the same way as the Andrew Wiggins contract, but I also, the national opinion, at least from a lot of media people on Devin Booker, isn't as rosy as we think it is here in Phoenix.
Well, I'll jump in. It's not really a debate. Booker is ahead of Wiggins. There's no question about it. My comments to Dave, and then so he could publish on Brightside, were a few things. First of all, I think I've sort of failed to recognize some of the improvements, particularly in playmaking, from Booker over the last season or two. So that was just a lack of sort of awareness on my part. Part of it was an intentional baiting of the crowd, not to be a jerk, but actually because I wanted to see what the reaction was. I actually wanted to know what the feeling about Booker was among Suns fans. And I got plenty of that reaction on the site, which was fine. It was fun, and, that's what I was after. I wanted to know what everybody down there, felt about him. In terms of, he's clearly ahead of Wiggins. I don't think there's, I wouldn't argue otherwise. Lord knows I am not a proponent of Wiggins. I don't see it happening for him at this point. But I will say this, if you look at sort of some of the catch-all advanced stats, they dislike both players in similar ways, right? And you don't have to take those as gospel, obviously. We don't take those as gospel. But when all of them sort of agree, you have to at least acknowledge it, right? That there's something there. Clearly, one of the reasons these advanced stats don't like either player, although dislike Wiggins even more, is because of defensive issues mostly. And I think that's valid. Look, the Wolves have been bad, the Suns have been bad. There's a lot of bad basketball in both cities over the over the course of both of these players' careers, right? So at a certain point, for Wiggins, he's been in the league 5 years, 13,000 minutes, whatever it is. He's been very durable, which is his one attribute, positive, one of his few positive attributes.
Durably bad, yeah.
But it's interesting. I was thinking about this after I sort of was reading the comments at Brightside, and then was thinking about it, looking more closely at Booker's numbers and thinking about it. And it seems to me there's sort of like, I can kind of see two directions. It doesn't have to be one extreme or the other, but it's either going to be like, you can imagine sort of on and this is not a bad result, in my view, but sort of the underwhelming career version of Devin Booker is Kevin Martin, right? Like, guy was a monster scorer in Sacramento for bad teams for years. Absolute, but incredibly efficient. Shot the three, got to the line, did all the things you want your scoring guard to do. couldn't guard anybody. The teams were bad. Basically, guys like this, whose sort of ultimate destiny is to be big scorers on bad teams. So that's sort of one version. And the other version, obviously the more positive or incredibly positive version would be more something along the lines of a Paul Pierce career, right? Where, again, Pierce, early in his career, scoring lots of points. Those Boston teams were not very good. They got some better players. All of a sudden, his stuff worked for a good team, and he was monster star on a championship team, and that also reached another finals and did all these good things. So I mean, I kind of can see with Booker. I mean, that's kind of my take at the moment after sort of thinking about it more. I don't know what you guys think about that.
No, I think those are actually really good comparisons. I'm not a big fan of the downside one you gave of Kevin Martin. And this for the same reason as Andrew Wiggins is because Booker is a much better distributor than either of those guys were. They couldn't
Martin
contribute
wasn't
on that
so
side.
bad at that either. I mean, he had his decent years with the assists as well.
I do get what you're saying. You're right. And that is a potential downside, especially if he gets on a – we have never seen Booker on a better team. So what's really still out for debate, and I totally agree with you on this, is that we don't know what Devin Booker looks like on a team that wins 35, 40 plus games. Andrew Wiggins was a star waiting to happen until his team got better, and then he regressed a little bit. And so we don't know for sure. Absolutely, I agree with you. I love the Paul Pierce type of comparison where he looked almost like he would be a really good player on bad teams until he got a good team around him. Then he became a star on good teams. And we can only hope that Devin Booker becomes that kind of guy where he looks even better on a good team. And we're all really, really counting on that still. So it does remain to be seen how this is all going to shake out for sure. What do you think, Tim and Greg?
Well, part of me wondered. Go ahead, Tim.
So just to cut in there really quick, to Eric's point about Kevin Martin being a good distributor, his best year in terms of assists was 2011-2012 when he averaged 2.8 for the Houston Rockets.
I kind of was at 6.8. So I get what you're saying, Eric. I do get what you're saying that we don't know if Booker is going to be just a scorer and not really a contributor to winning basketball until he's around a winning basketball team.
I kind of wonder what the perspective of Devin Booker would be, though, if he were saddled with having been the number one pick, like Wiggins has. So does that perspective shift simply because he was taken and expected to be a superstar from the word go, as where Devin Booker was taken at 13th, and that expectation isn't there as much? Did that shift the perspective on these guys too? I think Devin Booker is better, but
here's the thing about it. I mean, I'm done making excuses for Wiggins. I mean, listen. I mean, it's never been. I mean, I disagree somewhat with Dave's sort of description of it. He had a couple of his second and third years in particular were sort of his highest usage years with the Wolves. They were feeding the ball. He wasn't any better then. I mean, he didn't really. I mean, he regressed last season, but I mean, in some areas. But really, he's basically been the same player for his entire career. He hasn't really moved forward. He hasn't particularly moved backwards either. It's just been not very good the whole time. And the differences in his numbers have more been about, in his second and third years, they really force-fed him. And I think he peaked at about a 29% usage. Booker was even higher, over 30%.
Yeah.
And actually, just to shift gears a bit, it'd be very interesting to see what it looks like this year. I mean, I obviously, as I wrote about, and I'm a huge Ricky Rubio fan. I really hope you guys like